This is Leaders Elevating Leaders, bringing you the power of possibility by learning from successful leaders across Northeast Florida. We're breaking down barriers, overcoming fears, and stepping out of our comfort zones to be inspired and change our mindset from it's complicated to it's possible. I'm your host, Angela Timberlake, talent development executive, executive coach, business owner, and now the Vice President of Elevate Women with Jax USA Partnership, the Economic Development Division of the Jacksonville Chamber. And our mission is to elevate women to the highest level of leadership across Northeast Florida. When we do, we become a destination where top talent can thrive, which means our business, our economy, and our community thrive. Now, let's hear how it's possible for you. Welcome, everyone. Welcome to Leaders Elevating Leaders. I'm your host, Angela Timberlake, Vice President of Elevate Women. I'm excited to have our increasingly popular guest today, who was able to carve a little bit of time out of her schedule for us. She's had various leadership roles in their area, from TPC Sawgrass to Executive Director of American Cancer Society, Executive Director of the Beach's Historical Society. She serves on several boards. And most recently, you've probably known her as the Mayor of Jacksonville Beach. So Chris Hoffman, it's a pleasure to have you. Welcome.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here.
Great. Well, for those that don't know you, I'm sure there's a few still out there. Tell us a little bit more about you.
Sure. Well, I am not how I define myself, but it's pretty important to my background that I'm a Navy kid. My dad was a career naval officer, and it brought us to this area several times. So I've lived here in the beaches area 3 times. And when we all got to pick where we lived at the end of his career, my sister lives here now, we all picked Jacksonville Beach. So that's, with a lot of moving around when you're a Navy kid, when you get to pick your hometown, it's an opportunity. And the fact that we all picked Jacksonville Beach is pretty special. So it's really committed my whole family to this area, and where I put down my roots and where was really the motivating factor in desiring to serve in an elected capacity. So through my whole life, I've always looked for other opportunities to help lead and be very involved in my community, whether that was my community in high school, being active with our newspaper and with band and things like that, or into college, volunteering with the American Cancer Society pretty extensively, and then even in my community as a citizen. So being on nonprofit boards, I was very involved with BEAM, Beaches Emergency Assistance Ministry. As you mentioned, I'm now on the our hospital board, Baptist Medical Center Beaches, Volunteer Life Saving Corps, and with our Rotary. I'm active with Oceanside Rotary, and being fully involved in my community has always been very important to me. So really taking on the step of running for public office was just a logical next step for me in how to do that and how to give back to this community that's so important to me and to my family.
That's great. Thank you. We're so proud to have you in Jacksonville Beach and being a leader in so many different ways. Now, what would you say, what are some of the qualities that really contributed most to your success?
Well, I've only been mayor for 4 months, so I think that, history will tell, a successful mayoral term or not. It feels very good so far, and I think that the keys to that, having been on the city council for 8 years, really gave me a running start into this position. So really knowing and understanding the various different roles that you take on, as well as the listening and building partnerships in everything that I do, whether it be with the Beaches Museum, whether it be with City of Jacksonville Beach, Rotary, anything else. I'm always looking for who can we partner with to make our voices stronger, to make our impact greater, and to have other people in the boat row in the same direction. It makes things so much more impactful and effective to do that across the board. So even in the nonprofit world, a lot of times people see different nonprofits as competitors, and I really never go at that view. I think there's always opportunity, and I think that people, whether it be citizens, whether it be donors, whatever the case, see partnerships as a value and a position of strength. So I think that's always just so important. Partnerships, open and honest communication are 2 really, really key things to me.
Yeah, that's great. And I imagine you have quite a bit of mentors then contributing to your success. So let's talk about what role they played for you.
Yeah. So first and foremost, I had a very, very strong mom, and I mentioned my dad was in the Navy, so I had a mom who couldn't wait for dad to come home from work to deal with, the broken garbage disposal or to take disciplinary action if we were goofing off or anything like that. So my mom really did a great job figuring things out for herself, learning to be very independent. She went back to school to become an RN when my sister and I was 5 and my sister was 3. I went to college with no children, and I just can't imagine how she did it. And then she got her master's degree in midwifery when we were 13 and 15. So she really managed to balance and to raise us that we would be independent too. And that really helped her to be able to do the things she wanted to do in her career. And she had a great network of friends and family that helped her do that and helped raise me and my sister while my dad would be gone, 6 months at a time, sometimes with a Navy career. Trusted friends of the family, people that especially being in politics, you can run into having people around you that only want to tell you the thing you want to hear, or only tell you yes to things. And that is really that's a dangerous position sometimes. You need people that will be honest with you and that are not just around you or in your orbit because you're in politics or because you can do something for them. They're there for you as a person and for you as a friend. So I have various different people in my life, and it may be different people for different reasons that I will call upon and ask for advisement, people to kind of bring me back to earth and really assess and evaluate whatever the situation may be. So you have to be careful and know who has the strengths that you need at whatever the given issue is. So something I'm always gathering new
Yeah.
mentors and people that I can count on, and that can count on me back.
Yeah, and it's so important, as you mentioned, having someone that you can trust and having those people that are really honest with you, regardless of, what industry, what field you're in. Those are so critical. I can imagine even more so in politics.
Absolutely.
Okay, now what advice would you give yourself knowing what you know today?
With regards to running for office, or
Just in general, just being a
okay.
leader and leveraging your career. Yeah, what would you do differently?
That's a great question. I think that I did do, when I look back, I did do things that have served me very well now that I didn't really recognize at the time. I would, they say a lot of times women have to be asked to run for office. And when I heard that, it was after I already signed up to run for office. Nobody asked me to run. I just kind of jumped in, which isn't necessarily in my nature. I'm typically a little more methodical about that. I don't regret it, but I probably would have done a little more homework. But for me, that would have given me time to talk myself out of it. And I think that the fact that I really did I said, Jax Beach is it. This is a place that I can contribute and contribute in the form of leadership. And I jumped in. And campaigning is probably the most humbling experience I've ever been through. You learn who your friends are, and you learn who's really on your team, and you have to really ask for a lot of help. So it really pushes your limits on that, on needing help, on needing people, and with a strong leadership, you don't necessarily put that together, that people need people, but you really do. And I think when you have a good team, that helps you move forward in all aspects.
Yeah, absolutely. It's funny that you say that if you would have done more homework, you would have talked yourself out of it. I think we do that quite a lot as women. The more we know, the more we feel either not prepared, not qualified, or we don't want to take the risk. So it's kind of interesting.
I've been saying that even as mayor, being just a few months into it. I was on the council for 8 years, but I know plenty of people, typically men, who just I'm going to run for mayor, and they go for it. So whether it's at a small municipality or larger, that they don't necessarily have that running start of getting familiar with the processes of the city council. We do have a different form of city council than if a larger city like Jacksonville, for example, where a city manager, city council form of government versus a strong mayor, city council form of government. So really, my role is, in addition to being a member of the council, is that partnership with our city manager. So having worked on, it's almost like a corporate board or even a nonprofit board where I'm almost more of the board president, and our city manager is the executive or the CEO. So it's that opposite relationship that I have as a nonprofit director. So I've experienced both sides, and that really helps as well to put the right leadership in place and to trust those leaders to do their jobs and to know when to come back to the city council for advisement or approval or anything like that.
Yeah, that's good. Now, we've all taken on new things during this pandemic. I would say your challenge has probably been more challenging than most. So how are you handling the pressure of your personal life and, the pressures of being on all the time in your role? How are you handling that?
The good thing about where I've selected to use my time is that they really all work together. Having the Beaches Museum is right across the street from City Hall, so I can be accessible. The hospital board, the Life Saving Corps board, these are all things that tie both into the museum job and to the city council and to the mayor position. So I really try to make sure that I'm making the best use of my time and that I can be of value to any organization that I commit to. I'm probably one of the only people who's very happy about some Zoom opportunities. So I save a lot of travel time just hopping on Zoom. But I also had the very strong support of my board leadership at the Beaches Museum and our staff. We're in really good shape. So the fact that I can kind of keep the plate spinning there and hop over to City Hall when I need to. It's important to keep that distinction because the jobs cannot and should not overlap. Since I am working for a 501c3 nonprofit, but in some ways they just naturally do. When I go out and do a presentation as the mayor, I may also touch on the history of the beaches. So I really try to use the fact that I have some additional insight into the history of our community as a benefit to the role as mayor. So I try to make things work together as much as they can. A friend of mine said that I stand at the intersection of our community's history and its future. And that's when he said it that way, it was Chris Hand, who just has a wonderful way with words. It hit and it resonated. And I really feel like that's a great place to be. And it's also a great responsibility.
Yeah, I like that.
And I live very close as well. So everything I need is kind of in a 1 mile orbit.
Yeah, that's great. That is the good thing about the beach. That's a great analogy, though. We can actually visualize you standing there. That's perfect.
I'm very visual. So when he said that, I was like, that's exactly where I am. It's a great place to be.
Yeah, that's good. Now let's talk about the board service a little bit. When you and I first talked, we talked about, the challenge that women have of putting themselves out there or having the fear that they're not bringing value to the board. What can they bring to the board? So let's talk a little bit about that, the value that it's brought to you personally, as well as for your career.
Board service is probably the single best way to be ready for elected service. And I think one of the first things I even learned when I became an elected official is if you can't get other people, and in my case, it's 3 other people to make a majority vote to agree with you, then it doesn't matter how good your idea is. So having that training ground, I will say, especially with Rotary, of not only the opportunities to directly serve the community through nonprofit community service, but also to work with committees and boards and to see, especially with women, we can't do it all. And the more people that we can get working with us towards the same end, the more effective we can be. So I think that board service is a great training ground, but it's also just a really important contributor to our community. All of these nonprofits, especially at the beaches. We have some smaller nonprofits that are really doing wonderful work. They need strong leadership, but also strong workers. It's not just the leaders, it's the doers as well, to raise the funds, to provide strategic oversight, and to move the mission forward of the organization. So I would encourage, first find your passion. For me, when I got on the board of BEAM, I really wanted to impact a local organization. Having been with the American Cancer Society for so long, it's a huge organization, and even if you have your best year ever, the fundraising is still just a drop in the bucket of the overall challenge of fighting cancer, but also just the organization. Well, with BEAM, you can go and can make a difference immediately and see that difference right in your community. So I was very drawn to local organizations. In fact, once I left the BEAM board, I looked at the Beaches Area Historical Society. Local history has always been important to me, and I joined the board. So I didn't even have a career change in mind. So it was one of those things. I left TPC, and the day after I put in my notice, our prior executive director put his notice in. So sometimes you're just kind of right place, right time for that door to open. And it really has, it's been almost 7 years now. So it's really been a great opportunity for me to see, again, being able to make that direct impact, to develop the leadership of our board, our volunteers, our staff. And you can do that as a volunteer and commit as much or as little to the organization that you're part of.
Yeah, absolutely. And what would you say, about fears? I think a lot of us have fears that we have to overcome, whether it is running for a political office, whether it's, putting yourself out there for the board. So what's one fear that you've been able to manage or overcome?
A lot of people are scared of public speaking, and I will say, as a sophomore in college at the University of Florida, I took an introduction to public speaking, and it was the best, most valuable semester of college. And it's when you're running for office, and even in a board situation, if you are not ready to step up and contribute or to speak on an issue that's important to you, then it's going to be really hard to overcome that in this position. It's not just in the council meetings, but it's campaigning. You have to be ready and willing to speak to anybody about anything. And that's your responsibility really as a candidate, as you're walking around and meeting people. COVID made that a little more of a challenge this year with campaigning, but you really have to be ready to listen to a citizen complaint, large or small, and react appropriately to that, and to be able to really communicate effectively. So public speaking has not been a recent fear. Certainly the vulnerability that comes with being in elected office, I think for any woman, that's going to be a concern. You're really putting yourself out there. My face was on 4x4 signs all over Jacksonville Beach for 6 months. So that's a lot too, but I think you just have to work through them and be confident in yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. I did feel like I knew you before we even met because I saw you on our walks.
And it's so funny. I just assumed people would vandalize them. I had one person go through with a marker and black out a tooth on a couple different, and that was it. And then I have such great supporters. Before I even saw it in person, they had gone over there with whiteout to whiten my tooth back up. So it was amazing that was the only thing that happened, which made me very happy.
Yeah, I can imagine. Well, how are you talking about diversity? The diversity is a major topic in our society right now. So how are you leveraging your platform to talk through some diversity across our community?
I think that one of the things that we can do best as a city is make sure that we are involving as many citizens as we can to get as many diverse voices as possible. It's exciting on our council. I'm the first woman mayor, and now all of the 3 beaches mayors are women, but we also have 3 total women. So 3 of our 7 council members, including myself, are women. So I don't think there's a specific mix of genders or races but the more diverse voices that you have, the more depth you're going to have in the conversation, the more different opinions, the more different perspectives. And I think any organization can benefit from that.
Yeah, absolutely. Very well said. Hey, thank you so much for sharing with us, Chris. If you have one final piece of advice to give to the women following in your footsteps, what would that be?
I would say support other women. Get involved. If you think you want to run for office someday, get on a campaign Most of my volunteers and most of my campaign donors were men. And I think that it's just because women don't necessarily think about getting involved on campaigns to the same level. So I would say volunteer. My sister helped me with my social media. I had all my friends knew as soon as I filed to run for office that they were going to be volunteering with me. And it was just really, it's an incredibly valuable thing to do. And it's a great experience to learn about the process, especially with local government, because that is an area that we can make an impact. So I encourage people to get involved with your city government, but also to get involved with the campaign.
Perfect. Thank you so much. So
You're
thank
so
you
welcome.
everyone for joining Leaders Elevating Leaders. Thank you, Chris, for sharing your story with us. Until our next guest, stay bright, stay brilliant, and continue to elevate and inspire those around you. Thank you.
I love that. Thank you so much.